Work and Play in the USA, 1880 to 2010, is a module which considers the idea of work in the United States in the long 20th century, as well as the emergence and shape of a new domain that would be called leisure. I'm Dr. Andrew Fearnley. I'm a historian of the 20th century United States in the American Studies program, and I'm the convener of this module. What happens to the nature, the place, and profile of work in the United States over the course of the last 150 or so years? Adopting the perspective of a cultural and intellectual historian, we're going to examine some of the broad shifts that take place in the US economy between the 1880s and the present day. The module allows you to trace the move of work from workshops to factories, to assembly lines, perhaps synonymous with the Ford Motor Company around the turn of the 20th century, but really quite a widespread way of working, seen among manufacturers of consumer goods more generally by the 1910s and 20s, and through in the 1950s to the organisation of work in offices, and then in the case of America's tech industry in the late 20th century to work campuses, and more generally in society to the emergence of what are called third sites, which have once more blurred the physical distinctions between work and home. But we'll also think more conceptually about the place and profile of work in American society in this module, from cultural lamentations about its excesses and about the rise of workaholism, to more recent celebrations about overwork and the need for hustle, and to embrace a work culture of being always on. We'll trace the length of the working day throughout this period, and we'll ask how and why has the length of the working day changed? How long has the working week been? Or when is it possible to start talking about the existence of a weekend? We'll also consider the effects that technology, particularly machines, would have on work. The introduction of machines in the mid-19th century, for instance, would begin to dictate not only the length of the working day, but also the pace and intensity of work itself. This happened across many sectors, and it's been a constant theme of labour throughout the 20th and into the 21st century. Indeed, it's not only massive machines that have exerted an influence over the lives of blue-collar workers. Today, the intensity and rhythm of work for tens of thousands of our Amazon pickers, for example, is set by the handheld scanners that dictate their work schedules and measure the pace at which they perform it. Similarly, the digital and telecommunications revolutions of the 1990s and early 2000s does something similar for professional white-collar workers, often extending work through digital overtime and establishing an umbilical cord between the workplace and home. In this module, you'll also consider what all of these changes have meant for how workers have performed their labour, from the physically demanding tasks placed upon them in certain environments, through to the new techniques that consultants, engineers and advisors devised to make their gestures and movements of laying bricks or folding textiles more efficient, and to what in the late 20th century one scholar describes as the reinvention of labour as spectacle, where workers, in particularly the retail sector, are being coached to exhibit emotional labour, to treat customers as celebrities. We'll think about all of these topics alongside the growth of a new domain called leisure, which would be positioned in opposition to work, often as a break from it, as for instance a vacation, which becomes a mass entitlement for millions of American workers from the late 1940s on. And more broadly, we'll consider the activities, institutions, such as the saloons and taverns, ballparks and swimming pools, where such periods of rest and respite might be spent, as well as the social and cultural patterns and issues that each of these domains raise.